I'm Bill McMinn, and this is my dear wife, Jeri, and we are here for the Way to Go podcast. And since it is July 4th, and July 4th, typically we think about what?
Independence Day and fireworks.
And fireworks. If you did not say fireworks, I would have been very disappointed. Yeah. I would say probably most people think way more about fireworks than they do Independence Day.
Why are you really celebrating?
Honestly, we call it July 4th. We don't even really call it. Does anyone actually call it Independence Day anymore?
Not much. I mean, you don't hear it anyway.
No, I mean, it's like you call it the holiday. It's July 4th. Hey, why are we off again? Well, we are off because of this thing called the Declaration of Independence. Now, we're gonna talk about that some because I do think don't tune out right now. Oh, Declaration of Independence sounds boring, old crusty document. It is interesting. And here's what they started: the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. And they didn't even capitalize it in the document, which I think is interesting because we see ourselves now as the United States is our name. When they were saying the 13 United States of America, America was our name. Mm-hmm. And we weren't actually called the United States. This is just kind of coming out of, so it's all lowercase.
Right.
We're just United States. I mean, that's what we are. And it says, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another. And then you go on, and basically what they state in the first paragraph is, we are about to give you all the reasons why we are severing our connection with Great Britain.
Yeah.
And if the world were the jury, they were writing this for the world to see. Mm-hmm. And for every country leader, for all of the American people, I'm sure that they reprinted this, put it out there, posted it on town hall walls and doors. I'm sure it was all over the place as posters. And this is why we're doing what it is we're doing. So that's kind of the layout of it. But they say when it becomes necessary for one people. Mm-hmm. So let's just start with that. When you think about the United States, we are supposed to be one people.
Yes. We are united together. Although, people disagree, we are still a unit.
Right. It's one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mm-hmm. Right? So you look at it, we're one nation under God, indivisible. That's not how it feels to be an American today.
No, it feels very divided.
We are very divided. Mm-hmm. In fact, just was doing some research for Sunday morning sermon, and the happiness reports for the world. America is actually slipping down the list. We're like 19 in the happiness list. And they said that one of the reasons why a lot of other countries are happier than us, and they're all these cold countries, by the way. If you live in a very cold area, you tend to be happier. I don't know why. South America doesn't even make the list. I don't know what's going on down there, but it's all like Scandinavian countries. It's Sweden, it's Norway, it's Finland, and those two, Iceland, those are all like the happy places. And they said that one of the reasons that they are is because if they elect a very conservative government, it doesn't rankle any feathers. If they elect a very liberal government, it doesn't really rankle any feathers. People don't really get uptight about it. Mm-hmm. And because they're not fighting all the time about these things, they tend to be happier. Where you look at America,
fight about everything. Every little thing.
Seriously, we are super, super polarized in this country. And if you don't agree with me, you get canceled. That's how it is in this nation.
Right.
So we had a guy who spoke one time at our, you talk about, the importance of one nation, how divided we are. We had a guy Brad Clay spoke at our wild game feast, and they asked him about pronouns because now it's become a big thing, like what your pronouns are. I look at it and say, if you can't tell, number one, I shouldn't have to tell you what color I am. Just look at me. I shouldn't have to tell you, like, I'm just a guy. Like, I would look at it from that way, but he didn't want to give his pronouns, and they canceled him on TikTok for it. And it's so just cancel culture. It's just total cancel culture.
Agree with me or you're done.
Right. Yeah. And, it's political correctness. And I think that's one issue why we're divided. But they were here one people. And I think that helped them to accomplish much because they were accomplishing things together. And we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. And that's all people, not just men, women, everybody.
Mankind
are created equal. They are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, absolutely. We all have the right to pursue your dreams.
Right.
To be free as a people, to live your life. Someone doesn't have the right to take my life.
Right. Well, the American dream really is about opportunity. It's about the opportunity for all people to achieve the things that they want to achieve.
Right.
Now, one thing I would warn people on, you can achieve all you want. If you don't have God, you're still not going to be happy. So, and that's a passage I'm working on for Sunday morning. There's still a need of God in your life. So even with the American dream, you don't want to leave out of the American dream the God part of our life and a part of our world, because it doesn't matter what nation you're in or what part of the world you're in, God still made it.
Yep.
And we still need to look to God. So you can't forget about that. But he was saying again that we're all created equal. And I think that right here is a great statement against racism. It's a great statement against the division, that we shouldn't look down on people, because it doesn't matter if a person agrees with you. It doesn't matter if they're the most righteous person or the most sinful person. All people are created equal.
Yep. Yeah, and everyone has the right to believe or think as they choose.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we're each answerable to God for the decisions that we make. But to alienate people, like you see on Facebook all the time, if someone disagrees on something minor or minuscule, I mean, you just see the attack vultures coming in, to feast on them.
They call them trolls, Jeri.
Yeah, they're trolls, all right.
They're trolls.
They belong underground.
Yeah, I have been trolled actually recently. I didn't really know what it was all about until I actually got trolled by a bunch of people I've never even heard of.
It's truly ridiculous, that there's so much, I guess, it's my way or the highway, thinking out there.
Right, and that maybe you're less if you don't think like I do. When it says that all men are created equal, the reason that we're equal, number one, we're created. We're not here by evolutionary means or by random chance. We're not here by accident. We are created. We're created equal because every single person is made in the image of God. And because of that gives an equality to all people and a value to all people. And he says that these are unalienable rights. We have a right to life. And one of the complaints in the Declaration of Independence is that the king of Britain was killing people by their soldiers. So, I mean, right to life was pretty significant. We have the right to liberty. We have the right of choice. We have the right to be free. I mean, in our country, it is super important, the freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to bear arms. These are certain rights that we have that are huge, and the pursuit of happiness. And I think it's interesting that they understood that the happiness of people, it's important in the Bible. It's important to our founding fathers that people be able to pursue things that will bring joy and satisfaction to their life.
Sure. I mean, in our country, you have the freedom to pursue a career. You have the freedom to own property. Right. To purchase things. And all of those things can bring happiness. I think, too, in the pursuit of happiness can be the freedom of your religion and, worshiping God in the way you see fit.
Right. Absolutely. And it says, to secure to these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers by the consent of the governed. And so when you look at how they view government is there to help the people. The people do not exist for the government. The government exists for the people. Right. The decisions made by the government should come from the consent of the governed. And they said, when any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute a new government. And then he goes on to say that the new government should do this. It affects the safety of the people, the happiness of the people. So what is the role of government? Is to keep the people of America safe. Right. When you look at our government, it is to allow an even playing field that people can have the opportunity to pursue happiness, or what we have now deemed as the American dream. Right. So that's why they're here.
Sure. I mean, you think of government, it was instituted to protect the people.
Right.
And I like that part where it talks about it is basically the will of the people. The governed decide.
Right.
And that is the reason that we have representation in our government.
Right.
But I think one of the issues that we face today, yes, we have representation, but then they make all these decisions that they don't send through the representation for a vote.
Right.
So you'll have executive orders on things that really should be going to a vote, because if you're doing executive orders and just making decisions all over the place without going through the proper channels, it's no longer representing the governed.
Not when you can shut down in businesses. You shut down a pipeline, you shut down thousands of jobs.
It's like these things should be going through the proper channels. That's why we have checks and balances instituted in our government to protect the people from tyranny, really.
Right. Well, if the governors are enforcing their opinions down the throats of the governed, then something is wrong.
Yes.
If the American people have to abide by the will of government and government does not have to abide by the will of the people, something has gone amiss, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So because that's not what it is. And so it talks about, and I don't think that, I don't look at our government as being tyrannical or despots. I really don't. But I'm just saying we should definitely have consent, and you have your vote, get out there and vote. But back to this document here. What they were claiming is that was King George, right? Was the king of Britain? Their king was a despot. He was a tyrant. And 2 of the pages, at least, of the Declaration of Independence is laying out why they were doing what they were doing. They called it a long train of abuses, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce us under absolute despotism. And when you're doing this, you're trying to reduce us and diminish us to basically erase what we think is the right thing to do. Right. We have a right. And the whole thing is why we have a right to declare our independence. That's what the whole document is about. So it's interesting. I mean, they had some big, you'll have to read it. I can't read all this to you. I would definitely just go Google it. Read it for yourself. It'd be a good reminder of what people went through in this country.
One thing I think, too, all of the horrible things that were happening, it's intimidating the people. So basically, you're going to get in line and do what I tell you to do, or you might be the next one that is just going to be annihilated. And that's one thing that you have to watch out for, where there's so much pressure to toe the line. If you don't think exactly like we want you to think, or do what we want you to do, you're going to pay for it.
England was actually taking people, falsely charging them, and taking them to another country to try them, where they didn't even have rights. They didn't even have representation. Well, you think about how wrong that was. Hey, you're kind of in the way, and you're getting a little bit too maybe rammy as far as your thoughts on freedom and against things. So you know what? We're going to make up a charge. We're going to boat you over to England where you don't even have representation and try you there. There was a whole list of things that they said. They said that they relinquished the right of representation alleged. In other words, they refused to pass any laws to accommodate huge districts of people unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature. So they would say, so what the king would say, I'll tell you what, I'll let you have your way on this one, but you relinquish all rights.
Right.
You're not going to have any representation at all. That was way wrong. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. I love that, man. I love that. They oppose with manly firmness. You can just imagine what these men were like, right? In the revolution, these guys were tough, right? They oppose with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people, because that's what the representatives were supposed to be doing.
Right.
They're supposed to be protecting the people. They were protecting the people. And then for protecting the people, they were dissolved and told they had no rights. Would that tick you off?
Absolutely. Because you just come in, basically, if you're not going to vote the way I want you to vote or do the things I want you to do, then we're just going to get rid of you.
Right.
Yeah. We're going to get rid of this committee. Yeah.
They even said later on, it was interesting that they made redress to the government of England and got ignored. And then they made redress to the people to try to get them on board, to put pressure on the English government to hear their cries. And even they ignored them. Yeah. They said, no one's listening to us. No one is paying attention to what we're going through. And I think that caused a tremendous amount of frustration.
Sure.
But one thing they did too, the king has endeavored to prevent the population of the United States, of these states, he says, for the purpose of obstructing laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. So he was actually trying to prevent people from migrating because he didn't want a bigger population here. So he was trying to slow them down, and they're like, hey, we're trying to populate our states.
Right. And he wasn't allowing them to buy land.
Right.
Basically from England, right? Because England.
Well, I think they were doing other things. They said even in here he was encouraging the Indians to attack the colonists.
I saw that.
Yeah, you can see there's a lot of problems here, you guys. He has sent swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. We have standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has obstructed the administration of justice. So in other words, if a judge made a law, it wasn't a binding or made a decision until it went through the king. And then the king said if the law was okay. You can imagine how many months this takes to get a decision from a judge. Shipped by boat, it has to go all the way over to England.
Right.
Then he has to make the time. And they said then he wasn't even paying attention to it anyway. So then they would bring these decisions to him and he had just ignored it.
Yeah.
So he said, well, you can't make a decision without me, but then he wouldn't make the decision either. So, you could just see how many frustrations there were. For protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders. This is what they did. They quartered all these troops among us. Then they protected them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of the United States. So if an English soldier came over, murders a citizen, they would have a mock trial and let him off.
He's good. No problem here. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's the whole thing is just, it's controlling the people, keeping them in submission to you by not allowing them to have their own government, basically.
Right. Or when you're not doing justice and you're letting certain people off and the trial's a joke.
You see it everywhere.
And you do see the stuff starting to go on, right? Imposing taxes without our consent, cutting off trade with all parts of the world. This is the kind of stuff that was ticking them off. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, destroyed the lives of our people, transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, depriving us of the benefits of trial by jury.
Yeah. Unfair.
Right.
Totally. Because you just come in and they just say whatever they want to say.
Right. So, yeah, I think that, and he's excited domestic insurrections among us, endeavoring to bring the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. That doesn't matter. They're just going to kill people indiscriminately.
Right.
He said, you don't even care about that. And so, yeah, you can see why they had so many complaints. Like, this list is compelling.
Well, especially when you think of the government's purpose and the institution of government to protect the people.
Right.
Yet, instead of protecting the people, you're actually doing things that are detrimental to the people and harmful to them, yet still wanting their money for taxes, but not using that tax money to do anything to help them.
But I think, we see a parallel. I think it is in silencing the voices of good people in this country. There is a cancel culture. There is, if you don't agree with the political correctness and the media of our day, there is we're going to shut you down. I think it's extremely dangerous.
It's a scary place that we're headed in this country.
Here's how they viewed England. They said, we're enemies in war, we're in peace friends. So enemies in war, in peace friends. We're going to be friends with you when there's peace, but in war, you just know this, you are our enemy.
Right.
You're a soldier, you're here, you're the enemy of the United States. So, appealing to the supreme judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, we do in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right, ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, we have the full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may have a right do. And with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. I think that is powerful.
Yeah,
that is awesome. The Declaration of Independence is right there in that paragraph. We are free. Our allegiance to Great Britain is dissolved. We are free and independent states. And even now there's a wrestling through the power of the federal government versus the power of the individual states and individual states' rights. You saw it in COVID. A lot of states handled things differently, which I think was appropriate.
Right.
In some ways. In other words, I think the federal government has to have laws that we all abide by. You know what I mean? They're common good for all. Like, there shouldn't be racism. There should be justice for all. And, that shouldn't be, certain things can't just be decided by a state, but there should be states' rights.
Yeah.
And I think we did see it, in the pandemic that we've been going through, that each state made up their own decision.
I think one of the important things to realize too, this Declaration of Independence was signed, July 4th, 1776, but they had to fight for it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it went years of
right.
fighting for the actual independence that they declared. And as we celebrate July 4th, I think it's a great thing to remember all the people that really sacrificed. I mean, it was hard to fight for this independence that we take for granted.
We do. And just to know how hard it is, we call this the Western Reserve in Ohio where we live. And it's a tract of land about 55 miles north to south. It's a line that goes all the way 120 miles to the west of us. It is the north-south line of Connecticut. And this land was granted to people in Connecticut who had suffered loss in the Revolutionary War. That's why it is the Western Reserve, because of this. So I think, we forget on Independence Day, July 4th, what it's really all about. It's about freedom.
Yep, it is.
And it's about the struggle to be free. And I think it's a struggle we shouldn't forget, because we cannot allow our freedoms to be diminished. We cannot allow our freedoms of speech to be diminished. We cannot allow our freedom of worship to be diminished, or the right to bear arms, or any freedom that a governor would come and try to take away from us. We've got to start standing strong, or else what we're going to do is we're going to slowly leach and lose our freedoms that we have. And they were counting on divine providence. I mean, they were counting on God. So obviously these people believed in God, they believed in their creator, and these are things I would like to see our country get back to as well. But we appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate you listening. Hopefully it's been a fantastic reminder of what Independence Day is, what July 4th is, all that we have to celebrate as a country, and especially that freedom, the pursuit of happiness. These are life and liberty. These are all things that are of immense blessings that we have as a nation. You guys all have an awesome week.
Amen.